Welcome to Shaping Stories, a glass artist podcast. Here we sit down with hot glass artists from around the world to explore their creative paths, what inspires them, and the real moments that shape their work. Thank you for being here. You want to introduce yourself? Tell us your name.
I'm Erin Morris. Yeah,
And where are you from?
I'm from Ohio, from this 100 miles of corn in the center of Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati.
And where do you live now?
I'm in New Hampshire now, in Lee. I moved from Leesburg to Lee.
And let's skip the glass part of your life for a moment. Can you tell us what you enjoy outside of glass? What do you do for fun that's not glass related?
I'm in New Hampshire, so for me that is mountains. It's all the trails that are across the street. We've got this town forest with paths through it, so I'm out there every day. I like shooting pool when I get the chance. Um, I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm learning to sew.
I didn't know you were a nerd.
Oh, super nerd. Hey, I got 3 degrees in bugs, so I can bring it.
Oh. And tell us how you got going with glass.
We used to go to, with my family, a theme park every summer, and they had uh one of those glass shops where someone would be in there flame working on a castle or a ship or a dragon or something. And so I had it in my head at some point that I would like to be, that person. So when I was in grad school, there was a glass studio, it turned out not far away from me, and they offered a class on teaching how to make glass sculptural spiders. And I was like, I don't know what it takes to get into this, but please, please, please let me in. And they did. So that's how it got started.
And where were you in grad school and what were you in grad school for?
I was at Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio. I was a Buckeye for a lot of years there. And I was working on my master's in entomology. So I was like studying the bugs, but the idea of making glass bugs was like too enticing to pass up.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And then you went and took that class and you never stopped?
Well, okay. So, first of all, it was this advanced class. So I called them and I'm like, I've had no experience behind the torch. But if there's anything that I can do to get into this spider class. And so it was Hannah Rosner that I was talking to. And she said, okay, so if you take glass bead making 1 this weekend and glass bead making 2 next weekend, then the third weekend we'll let you in. And so that's what we did. And she specifically said when I was taking a class with her, a bead making class, she's like, "You're in grad school, you better watch out because glass is going to derail you and set you off your course." And boy, she was right. There wasn't really any turning back once you get behind a torch.
Did you finish grad school with your focus or did you completely derail from that moment?
No, I did more. So I finished my master's there, and then I moved to Cornell to do a PhD in entomology. And so I had another 4 years after that. And then I did a postdoctoral research position in Copenhagen in Denmark. That was 9 months away from my torch. That was hard. And I did another postdoc position in Michigan, but there they had a Delphi glass, which is a glass, a big stained glass store, and they also would do flame working classes. So I got to get back into the regular practice of glass back when I was living in Michigan.
When you were traveling, were you still like thinking and dreaming of glass? You just weren't at the torch, or you just kind of put that part of you on pause and just kept focusing on all your studies?
I don't think I ever stopped thinking about glass. Like for a day even, you know, and especially when you're away from it, you find yourself like vicariously living through other people's glass that they're posting or buying glass that you have no idea when you're going to use. I've noticed that too. I'll see online that someone's like out of commission because of whatever reason and they're most aggressively buying glass at that time, and I get that because I've been there.
And so then you're back and you're into glass. Didn't you go to school for glass after that?
No, no,
No,
no, I
no.
wish.
So how did you just keep learning on your own and just keep pursuing it? Because you're full-time glass now, right?
Yeah, yeah. I took
Yeah.
a lot of classes to get the ball rolling. Yeah, the gap between going from academia to glass full time is a little weird. It would be that I would like analyze data all day in my day job, and then I would get home and just melt colors, smash colors together in a flame. So it was like I got to go off duty from the first job and just mess around. And then I was doing that more and more and more to where I was doing like, I don't know, 20 or 30 hours of glass on top of my full-time job. And so for a while it was like equal amount of time I was spending on both glass and the bug world.
And how did you figure out how to set up your own space and do that part? So you're working a full-time job, you're making glass all around it, and then just running your own studio space, no matter how small, that's a lot of work.
It's a lot. I mean, it took for, I mean, to start with, like glass is not easy or cheap to get into. So it took me a few years just to, like, year one, I got a torch and it sat unused for a year. Year two, I got a kiln. You know, by year three, I'm setting it up with terrible ventilation because that seems to be everyone's process. You know, so when I moved here in New Hampshire, I ended up shelling out. I paid a contractor to come in and I said, these are the specs, here's the fan that I bought, can you install this ventilation in my garage? And so we got started from there. So first of all, it was just like years of work to get the equipment, and then at the end I had to pay someone else to put together that ventilation unit.
Yeah, there comes a time where you only have so much time in the day, and if you're working and you're making glass, like it
Yeah.
takes up everything. When you started doing glass, what year was that? When you were in grad school?
It was '07, 2007.
And was that borosilicate or was that soft glass?
No, that was soft glass. Yeah.
And so you pretty much always worked soft glass. You do work a little borosilicate now.
I took one class, maybe like in '08 or something, again with Hannah Rosner to make some little floral components, some flowers and leaves and stuff. And that's been it so far.
And then can you bring us to the leap when you decided to quit your day job, or how did that go?
Well, okay. Yeah. I think one thing that happened, like a defining point, is you do your bachelor's, your master's, your PhD, and you're like a bona fide scientist now. And they don't really tell you what to do aside from being a professor somewhere. And so I applied and I did the interviews and I got that job offer. You know, I got the phone call and I could see that it was from Texas, and I knew that this was going to be a job offer, and I thought I don't actually want this job, and I let it go to voicemail. And and I turned that job down, and I'm pretty sure that ever since I did that, long-term academia in my head was no longer an option. And it was a few more years before I truly off-roaded into glass, but I'm pretty sure that the second I said no, I don't want to be a professor, that's when that's when glass started just growing in the back of my head a little more and more and more.
I
And
actually
so the actual like switch happened. So I'm an academic, I married another academic, and that leads to something called the two body problem. I don't know if you've heard of that. Yeah. So you're in grad school, you're in your formative like mate finding years or whatever, you're getting your PhD, you're 30, and the people that are around you are also academics. So you end up hooking up with making partnerships with other academics. And then when it comes time to find a job, you're in a job market where it's not like I'm going to go live in Columbus. It's more like, okay, there's a job in Baton Rouge that might fit me. There's a job in San Francisco that might fit me. And then your partner goes, well, I have an offer maybe in Toronto, and I have an offer maybe in, who knows? And they just don't line up. So you've got this two body problem because it's hard enough to find a position for one person. So I ended up being a trailing spouse to my husband who came here to New Hampshire at the University of New Hampshire. He got the faculty offer and he's a professor there in their physics department. And so I had like a 3-year postdoc appointment there with no like guaranteed something at the end of that road. And so I was working there up until 2020. My last semester there, working, researching, and teaching in the biology department was right when the pandemic like clicked into full gear. So I started the semester teaching in person, and then by the end of the semester, I'm teaching on Zoom from home. And my contract for that postdoc position was ending, and I didn't have anything lined up after that. And I thought, well, there's never been like an easier sign to try this. I'm already home. I'm already doing glass 30 hours a week, and I literally have no other job because my job is ending. So if I can't be brave enough to do it now, will I ever? So that's what happened.
Wow, I never thought about any of those concepts on just like the academics all kind of being isolated within those are your contacts, so those are who you're going to be with, but then the job resources are just all around the country. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And so in a way, it's been nicer to be in glass now because if my backup had been something else, who knows? But with glass, you set up where you are and you just start melting. So I'm grateful for that.
What did your partner support this throughout, or and your family and stuff, or did they think that you were crazy after going through all this education to become an artist?
I I think I'm extraordinarily lucky. So to begin with, my parents were so hands off in what I might do or want to do. They just gave me like probably more agency than they should have given a teenager. So I didn't say, I'm thinking about applying to college here or here. I just said, okay, I've applied to Ohio State. I got in. I'm going to Ohio State. I'm going to study bugs. And they just, okay, you'll figure it out. We assume you'll you'll figure it out and make your own way. And they ended up being the same about glass. They bought me that first torch and they bought me that first kiln and helped me set it up and everything. So they've been super supportive. And my spouse, um, it happens a few times a year. Sales are up and down, volatile or whatever. And I'll think, maybe this is the time I should start looking for something else. And it's always him that has been the one that said, I think you're doing fine. I don't see any reason why you need to. We're getting along great. Just keep at it. And so he's been just beyond supportive.
That's amazing.
The people that have thought that it was crazy have been um, the scientists, like the people that I went to grad school with and attended conferences and gave, you know, uh, research talks and stuff. They're the ones that are like, oh, what else is going on? They don't really know how to approach it, or they feel like um, they might think that I consider it some embarrassment or something that I'm not in academia anymore. Yeah. Whereas the people that have an art background that I know, they have been the most floored. Oh, I'm so excited for you. Oh, that's great. Oh, what are you making now? So it's been nice.
And when you started doing glass, you started doing soft glass bugs. So it's
Mhm.
kind of ironic, right? Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how your work has changed over the years?
Um, how has it changed? Right. I would say that I just keep my work keeps getting, or I should say that I make lots of nature inspired glass primarily. I make beads, but I also make birds and fish and bees and things like that. And I'll I would say that the biggest difference is that I'm getting more and more detailed. It's not like I make completely different things. I'm really big into iterative work. I like to come back at an idea over and over and over again and see where it can evolve over years. But that's allowed me to really hone in and get, like a lot of detail on a really small piece of glass. Some of the newer evolutions are taking those skills with micro sculpture that I've learned and doing harder things with them. So, like maybe I spend 5 years working on glass crows, but now I can put glass crows on little vessels. Or maybe I'm making little bees and they haven't changed much, but I'm learning to make complicated bracelets that have lots and lots of little bees on them. So I'm, making things, bigger things out of the tiny little bits of glass.
And when you have an idea, do you tend to draw it out? Do you make lists? How do you keep track of everything and keep track of your processes?
I I do a lot of drawing and sketching. I take a lot of photographs of work going all the way back. And I also keep notes, and I've got lots and lots of like inspiration and development folder files so I can track how things are going or write down what new ideas will be that way. So, and I like to do lists too. So I do all of it. None of it is that organized, but I do have a science background. Everything's written down. If you don't write it down, it's going to be gone forever.
And can I should have asked this earlier, but can we nerd out just a little bit and can you talk about your studio space, like what it's set up, what kind of kiln you use, what kind of torch you use? Do you use oxygen bottles or oxygen concentrator?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've got, I worked on a Nortel miner for like, I don't know, 12 or 13 years, and I'm on a Bethlehem Alpha now, which is largely the flame is pretty much the same, but I made the switch from tanked oxygen to an oxygen concentrator a few years ago. And the Bethlehem Alpha is really nice for working at the lower pressure that the oxygen concentrator puts out. So that's what I'm working on. My I quit with the oxygen tanks just because like trying to get one of those huge tanks into my Honda Civic and illegally driving it to the welding company where they make you sign a paper saying you didn't just do that was I don't know, it was a terrible idea and I'm glad I'm rid of it. Um, what else have I got? I'm working in a Paragon Bluebird XL. I love this kiln. It's got some bead doors on it, and it's just been a total workhorse, except for when it does break, which is what brought me to your studio.
And okay, so you do so many things that's not just glass. You do a lot of fairs, you do a lot of videos and social media and outreach. You make the glass and then you also put it together. Do you have another space that you do that putting together stuff? You have like an office in your home. And also, how do you organize your days and keep track of what you're focusing on? Do you do glass in big bunches? And, can you talk a little bit more about how, as a self-employed person, you strategically go about all of your responsibilities?
So for space, so my torch is set up in the garage. It is not ideal because I don't have heat or air conditioning. So in the winter, that means I'm wearing 4 fleeces and, it's just freezing and miserable. And So everything else that I do that is not actively melting glass is in a different space. I've got an office in the house that has got, like computer, printer, shipping materials, like all of that stuff. And then also my jewelry making supplies is up in there. And those are the two main spaces. I briefly, because, all right, so you start making glass and then you want to make it into glass jewelry. And then you realize there's a whole set of like metalsmithing skills that would really help you. So now you've got a metalsmith bench and you have to find space for that. And so, yeah, I'm in 3 rooms of the house and I don't think anyone's happy about that, but that's just how it has to be. For organizing my day, I keep glass for the afternoon because I work small. I'm not the steady creature that I like to be behind the torch in the morning. So I save that for the afternoon. So first thing in the morning, I'm cleaning beads and setting out shipping, getting packages together, taking care of like administrative stuff, or maybe putting together some jewelry designs. And then at about like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then it's torch time for the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks. Can you talk about the different ways that you make income, and does it change throughout the year? So maybe in the summer and the winter, you make more income on craft fairs, and you have your Etsy, but you're also kind of selling through your Instagram, right? And Facebook
Yeah,
groups, right?
right. There's so I started out selling in these Facebook lampwork selling groups. And if you are wanting to sell your glass and you're not involved in these groups, you should get there because it's a really low investment way to access groups that have people that are completely educated on what lampwork, flameworked glass is and what goes into it. So that gives you a perfect audience that can appreciate what you've got. And all you have to do is upload photos and then send like a PayPal invoice. I would say a solid 2/3 of my income comes from selling beads to other collectors or jewelry makers in Facebook selling groups. The rest of my income is, I'd say the next chunk comes from in-person artisan fairs, and those start kicking into gear later summer and on through fall and into winter. So I'm getting into local craft fairs, and that's finished jewelry that I'm selling at those. And it's totally different because the Facebook groups, they understand what they're looking at and why it's important or special. The artisan markets, you've got people, you have to combat um, the idea or the baseline assumption that you bought all of these beads, that they were mass produced in China. You have to justify the price. You have to say over and over again, I'm a glass blower. I made all of this with a torch. Like every piece, I had to make one at a time. But it's nice because in that case, you get to actually interact with other business owners. You can get ideas you can get mentorship, which is great that you don't necessarily run into in the Facebook groups. And you get to see a real-time response of people reacting to your work, which I think is priceless. I've also just started doing some teaching. I did a lot of teaching in academia. It's a little different and also not so different teaching in the glass space, but I'm glad and ready to do more of that because I got so much out of glass classes. It's my number one recommendation if you want to get into glass is to take a class. So I'm making a little bit of money from that too as a separate stream.
Do you find that the glass community has been wholly welcoming, and like you have found all those experiences to be very pleasant, or have you found to any of those kind of glassy jerks out there that don't necessarily appreciate what you do?
I guess that I don't care if people don't appreciate what I do because there are enough people that do. So everyone's glass isn't for me. My glass won't be for everyone. That won't matter. On a whole, I've generally found glass people to be absolutely so welcoming. From the first like class that I took to making it to my first International Society of Glass Bead Makers conference, people there were just like, "Oh, a new person, glad to have you, come on over here." So I thought that the glass people have always been, let's just say that it's always been easier to connect with people who had a torch in common than other things. So that's been great. And that's not necessarily the same as I've encountered in academia. So, as a foil to academia being literally a little bit of a stiff space where people are defending their little corners, I've found glass to be much more amenable to newcomers.
That's cool. It's good to hear. And what do you do when you're feeling stuck or uninspired? And how do you reset that?
That one's a little tough to navigate because, I mean, anyone in a similar position will understand that when you turn your hobby into a full-time business, then you've got some extra lines that you have to toe if you want to preserve what brought you there in the first place. So if I notice that I'm stuck or frustrated or feeling unmotivated or undisciplined, the very first thing I have to ask myself is this wrecking like my lifelong love of glass? And if it is, then do I need a break from this? So even though it might hurt my business, if I'm starting to feel pressure too much, I will take a step back and just go outside and kick rocks for a while. Or put aside the orders I have and just make something that's weird and serves no one but myself. I'll do that. Or there's in the bead making circles a challenge they call the 40 bead challenge. I'm wearing it right now. You pick 2 colors of glass and you make 40 beads using only dots and no tools or anything. And it's just a nice way to spend time at the torch without constraints, making something of no consequence.
What do you find the hardest aspect of all the things that you're doing right now as a self-employed glass artist? Do you find that it's hard to sit at the computer, hard to talk to the customers, or does it change day by day?
I think by far turning into salesperson is the hardest part. Um, I've still got an inner dread when someone says, I'd like to buy this. How much is it? Just the ego it takes to say, this is it, this is the price. Trying not to feel like a slimy salesperson or something, even though they found you and they loved your work and they want it. There's a lot of mental work that goes into being okay with selling things. So that's been a huge challenge. And especially all of the like social media that seems to have to go along with it. Like every year I resolve that I'm going to have a marketing plan and I'm going to put this many posts out and I'm going to have these newsletters. And then it's May and oh no, I've made 5 posts. What happened?
Feels on that. What kind of final thoughts or words of wisdom do you have, or anything that you feel like you want to talk about that I missed?
Good question. I run into a lot of people at artisan fairs who walk up to me and they say, I've always wanted to try this. And I always tell them, you should, please do. Get behind a torch. Here's a place where you can start to learn. Contact me if you have questions. We want, more people to get involved. So if you're listening to this or watching this and you are sort of vicariously living the life of a glass person and haven't tried it yet, go try it. Go find a place, take a class. It'll be worth it. Yeah. And then if you've already been doing glass, but you haven't been getting together with other glass people, you should join a society or go to some meetups or something, because it's really useful if you have the ability to hang out with other glass folks and see where that can take you.
So where can people find you and support your work?
I'd say for a good view of what my day-to-day is, you can check out my Instagram. I've got a lot of posts on things that I've been working on. The caveat is that because I'm not great at the marketing, usually if you see it, I've already sold it or it's generally not available. But if you want to know what I'm doing, it's there on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Imperial_Moth_glass. That's my company name. It relates to my entomology background. The Imperial Moth is a beautiful silk moth that I admire. And I've got a website, imperialmothglass.com, that's got my upcoming events. So if you wanted to see one of my online bead shows, I've got links and dates. And if you want to come meet me in person, it's got my artisan fair scheduled too.
And you do sell some stuff on Etsy too, right? Or is
Yeah. So I've got an Etsy website where I've got those styles that I've made enough times that you can look at a picture and say, I want one, and then I will make it to order. If you come to a Facebook trunk show, you'll get stuff that is just what I wanted to make that week. So there's a pretty big difference in what you see in those two different places.
cool. That's good to know. And I didn't know where your name came from, so I like
Yeah,
that.
that's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to Shaping Stories. If you like our podcast, please make sure to follow on whatever platform you're listening on. We are always grateful for your reviews to help other artists find us. You can find us on Shaping Stories Pod on Facebook and Instagram. And please make sure to support this artist that we interviewed today. It's a lot of guts to come on here, and we appreciate them being vulnerable and sharing, and especially for their very valuable time. If you know somebody that might like to be interviewed, or you might like to be interviewed yourself, I would love that. Please send an email over to me to dom@terrapinglass.com. I really look forward to seeing you, and I can't wait to continue with this project.